Alrighty, everybody, welcome to my rig rundown video. This is my pedal board, and this is the rig rundown video. So beginning, the board itself is like an OSP flight case, 32-inch flight case with the doghouse. You can see in the doghouse there, it's mostly I just use it for cables. Um, Everything is powered by a Walrus Atos power supply, as well as a little three-way extension cord running off the chain output of that for a couple of warts for some of my higher draw or different voltage pedals. Everything is direct. Everything you're going to hear in this video is running straight out of the board and microphone that I'm speaking into. Hello. Into a Steinberg UR242 audio interface, being recorded with Cubase 10.5 Pro. Off screen, we have a passive volume pedal. It's a Rocktron Utopia. I'm not totally in love with the curve of the pot on it, but it works as a way to just kind of manage volume levels by foot, as I can't really reach my volume knob too easily. Speaking of which, this is the preamp that I use, LR Bag's Gig Pro Universal Preamp. And that thing treats me pretty well. I've looked at maybe upgrading to a radial, but being able to have this on my belt, I have maybe a 42-inch cord coming off of my pickup, and if I start adding much more length onto that, I run into serious issues with tone loss and all that, just due to the impedance of everything. Get that, sorry. And then also there is in the corner here, a Boss FS5U foot switch that I have plugged in. Just a single momentary foot switch for the bypass function on the Super Ego Plus. Anyway, my clean sound, I do play bassoon, and so this is primarily a horn rig. I run direct out. I've just found that clarity of effect and tone of the instrument and everything is better when I'm running into a PA versus I've tried several guitar amps, several bass amps, and nothing has really tickled my fancy. I haven't found anything that sounds better, so I'm just running into a Soundtech S20 100 watt powered mixer, and then out into two Soundtech B2X 12-inch PA speakers. But yeah, my clean tone, or whatever you might call it, pardon me, sounds something like this. And then yeah, onto the board. I run data corruptors up first. It tracks really nicely on the bassoon. It sounds cool. It's a PLL. I've thought about maybe getting like a Behringer's SY1, or sorry, a Boss SY1, but I just haven't found haven't found one, or necessarily money to get one. And I quite enjoy the PLL sound, and I find that it tracks really nicely on bassoon. So, and most of the time I just use it for straight octave up and octave down. Although sometimes I do use the major third down setting and like a fifth up, just to kind of fatten up the sound. But then as far as trying to play in any certain key, or those fixed interval ratios tend to cause problems. So here's how the data corruptor sounds. Woohoo, data corruptor. Next up in the chain is an EHX flat iron fuzz. I use this. I play in a kind of a pop rock. Oh, where dog's just eating. Kind of a pop rock group. And I read second guitar parts. So this is my sound like a guitar with the lights off pedal. And it's apparently EHX's take on a rat. I've never used a rat, so I can't say, but it does, light distortion. This is I have been playing guitar with this board recently, and so it might be a little more aggressive of settings than I would usually use. But it's overall a very nice pedal. It retains a lot of clarity of the bassoon sound while adding some of that kind of fuzziness. And that's something I briefly owned, like a Walrus Kangra filter fuzz, and the fuzz side on it just totally obliterated the bassoon sound. It sounded great on guitar, but it just kind of took the guts out of what I already had going with the bassoon. So that has since left the board. Next up is the EHX Super Ego Plus. I run this a lot in the auto mode. I find it tracks best in the auto mode for what I like to do with it. I kind of use it as a sort of add a subtle ring, almost like a synth reverb, if you want to think of it like that, behind my playing. But in auto mode, the switch tap once turns the effect on, twice turns the effect off. But when the effect is on, you can basically prevent the decay from happening on a frozen sound. So if I play a note and I hold the pedal, all of a sudden I get the frozen sound held out. And so I'll kind of use that to, if I'm playing an arpeggio or something, I can kind of capture a note in the chord and play over it. So that sounds kind of like this. So that's a fun one. I really love this pedal. The effects on it as part of the quote-unquote multi-effect I find to be very usable in their own right. The octave effect itself. The octave effect itself is very good. That sounds kind of like this. And yeah, I have that set up. I should note that I run the effects loop. I just run the send, and then the send goes over to the rolls mini mix. I basically have three chains, so to speak, that all get bussed back together in the mini mix before it goes to a single output. And one of those is the dry sound on the Super Ego, the wet sound on the Super Ego Plus, because that I find that it just, as much as I'd love to, have a big modulation frozen signal thing, keeping the frozen sound out of everything else I have going on gives me a lot more flexibility, and you'll see why that is important a little later in the chain once we get to the A, B, and how I'm running this stuff over here. But if we follow the yellow brick road, or rather follow the Ernie Ball pancake road, out of the Super Ego we go over the MXR phaser, phase 95. I mean, it's a phaser. It makes a phaser sound. I really like it. A little slower than it's set right now. Just to add kind of some movement in the sound, and with the bassoon that sounds like this. So yeah, and I usually use it just in the regular phase 90 mode, non-script. I find that's the most pronounced effect, and because I use it kind of more as an effect than an always-on thing, having it set up to that higher intensity tends to serve well. Anyway, next up we have the Rainbow Machine. It's a rainbow machine. I use it for the chorus sound that everybody loves. On bassoon, that sounds like this. And then the magic effect is cool every once in a while, bring in sort of some background noise. Sorry about that. Adjusted gain real quick there. Um, and yeah, I quite enjoy this pedal. When I do use it in its more extreme settings, if you will, I tend to go the pitch knob all the way counterclockwise rather than all the way clockwise. Um, just as clockwise, it's moving a major third, and if you stack major thirds, you get an augmented chord, which is great for sounding very spooky, but I tend to not need to sound any spookier than I already am. But I'll just show you how it kind of sounds all the way to the one side. So yeah, that's the Rainbow Machine. Up next, I recently got a Walrus Bellwether because 4 delays on my board was not enough. Um, Counting the Rainbow Machine in the afterneath. 2 if you want to get really technical about it. And yeah, this is just cookie cutter analog delay, mod analog delay. It sounds great. It's not super long time. It gives me a nice delay sound. That sounds something like this. Just kind of a nice little wash behind whatever you're doing. If we turn the mod off, open up the tone control a bit, it sounds like this. Just a real nice sounding delay. If I continue moving forward, which is always the goal, I got an afterneath a couple weeks back as well, and it is just a really nice reverb pedal. The way it interacts with the bassoon sound is nice. If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of sort of ambient effects, and the afterneath does that, I think, pretty well. And I got it at a decent price as I was trading in some other stuff. So here's how that sounds. Real nice layer to you're playing. And I don't have any really like favorite settings that I have this set up for. I enjoy both kind of the more cloudy reverb or the more grainy reverb, if that's a good way to put it. This is kind of what I'd consider a cloudier setting. If I wanted something grainier, I might do something a little more like that, and that would sound like this. Um, so yeah, that's a real fun pedal. I do wish it had a tails mode though. And then we go out of there and we take a little trip through Doghouse Land, and then we go into the Switchblade Plus ABY. It's nice. It's totally passive. I have it plugged in for power just because I don't like buying batteries, and I like having a light to see where I'm at. The A side of that is the Avalanche Run. The B side is the Grand Canyon. And yeah, I have messed with like running the afterneath into the bellwether and then using the dual outs from the bellwether as a splitter to both of these, but it kind of misses the mark as far as what I need to do. There are certain advantages as to being able to isolate one of these on the off side, and I'll get into that. First, we'll talk about the Avalanche Run though, because that's probably a little bit simpler of a pedal. It's does what it does really well. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with this thing. I really wish it was stereo, like true stereo. Of course, that has its share of issues, but I do have the stereo mixer, and so mixing everything down in stereo is not out of the realm of possibility. But I've gone back and forth a bunch of times as to trying to get a stereo rig really off the ground, and just there are difficulties. Sorry about that. I just had to change the camera angle. There are certain difficulties that come with that. Especially trying to get it to transfer well in a live situation. And, if I am just at home doing it, it's like, for more studio stuff, there's really not much advantage to be had over just using in the box effects, plugins and such on the computer at that point, because it's just a more doable way to get that done. Anyway, I do use it sometimes as just like a regular reverb delay, and that sounds like this. It does like hocketing things really nicely if you have it set up like that. But the most of what I use it for is just to create pads. So I'll set everything super wet, and then basically I can just dump some sound in there, and then it'll kind of stir up the sound and output reverb made from that sound. So that sounds kind of like this. Let me make a change. that sounds like this. And then that will just continue to kind of do its thing. Which brings us over to the Grand Canyon, which I tend to use as a looper as well as a delay pedal. I use the shimmer and the reverb modes on it a lot, honestly. I like how they sound, as well as some of the digital delays and the emulations. The Bellwether is a chorus mod on the repeats, whereas the Digital Memory Man model on the Grand Canyon is a vibrato mod. And so you get kind of different flavors there in the mod effect. I don't think I've really found a mode that I haven't liked. It's definitely by far the deepest pedal. But I also use it as a looper mostly. I do a lot of sound on sound looping with it. The dub level is set up right now so that it does decay over time. And then I just use it kind of as a sound on sound looper with the additional effect. I think right now we're on the Digital Memory Man setting, so that sounds kind of like this. Just basic delay. And that does feed into the loop as well. And most of what I'll do, I'll just set up the looper, record a silent loop, because the looper on this thing, the big downside with the Grand Canyon is that it is not a rec dub play. It is locked to rec play dub. And so if you want your reverb tails and stuff to go over the loop, so to speak, you have to record a silent loop first, which kind of sucks. But as you've seen, it's not too terrible. I just kind of use this as a sound on sound thing, and trade off dumping audio into the avalanche run for that effect. To kind of use that for those pads, and then everything gets mixed down at the mini mix, which means that when I have my Super Ego on, the frozen sound the drone doesn't dub into the looper or the avalanche run, which is helpful because that turned everything into a mess really fast. So yeah, that's basically how my board works. We go out to the Sidekick DI at $25 DI. It gives me a balanced signal. XLR is really just kind of the way to go in the 21st century, for more reasons than one. And so yeah, without further ado, I'll do a little jam on the board and then wrap up this video, because I know we've already gone too long. So yeah, this is kind of the sort of music that I make. My name's Max, and I hope you enjoy this video.